My thought for food is that I wish jam was more convenient, like being handy or something. So we have a scenario writer? Had this been an actual short, you would have been told what your thought for food should be. It sounds like the Little Rascals are gonna start any second now. The Modern Housewife, no joy allowed.
Oh, Henry, breakfast ready.
So am I.
Ready to die, honey.
Coming up, Mother.
Betty Jane.
The dingoes took my baby.
Can't find my yellow glider.
Well, you look for it after breakfast, honey. Everything's getting cold. Junior, you might use your comb and brush.
And you might quit nagging me, Mom.
Gee, do I drink this orange juice?
Do he drink his orange juice? We may never know.
Mother, I don't want any crust on my toast.
Say, you kids, you eat what is set before you and like it.
I learned that the hard way.
Gee, this orange juice has seeds in it.
Henry. What do you want for supper?
Seeds in my orange juice, same as every night.
Same for dessert. Huh, Mother? Huh?
I was speaking to your father.
Huh? What is it?
What do you want for supper?
Whatever you give me will be okay. You're running the house.
Yes, but I'm running it to please you, dear.
And not regretting my wasted life at all.
Thanks right now.
I mean for supper.
Darn if I know. It's up to you. I don't care what you have.
Oh, yes, you do. If it's something you don't like, you'll have plenty to say tonight.
Well, it is your fault for not being telepathic, honey.
What to have for supper? I got enough to do to look after my own business. A fellow certainly ought to be able to depend on his wife to run the house.
But I try to run it to please you, dear.
Well, all I say is go easy. Say, breakfast is no time to ask me what I want for supper.
They fight a lot, but stay together because the sex is fantastic.
I can't imagine.
Well, how do you expect me to imagine it?
Say, you women give me... Doggone it. You ask me this question every morning of my life.
By gum, golly geez, darn tootin', you thoughtless
Do
ragabond.
you realize how much time I spend every morning planning meals and figuring out what to give you for supper? You know, you're not the easiest man in the world to please.
No? Well, you know what I'd do if I were running this house?
No, I should like to have you tell me.
Beef every second of every day.
Come up every morning of, what do you want for supper? I'd sit down and plan menus for 3 meals a day for 30 days ahead. No, I'd make it for 60 days. And as regularly as those days rolled around, we'd have plenty of variation and good food to eat, and I wouldn't have to be bothered every morning trying to think what to purchase for supper. That's what we do in business.
In fact, honey, you're fired. I'm gonna hire a new
The
wife.
same thing won't work in the home.
Well, if you think it's so easy, why don't you stay home and try it someday? Junior, fold up your napkin.
Fold up his napkin? Why do I get the feeling we're gonna hear about no-wire hangers soon?
No. Any little girl that won't eat the crust on her toast can't have any candy.
I'll eat it, Mother. Then can I go out to play?
Yes, go ahead.
I was allowed to play once. It didn't involve pleasing my husband, so I didn't like it.
Goodbye, dear. I'll be seeing you tonight.
Unless my mistress keeps me from coming. Well, better break out the booze.
Good morning, Mrs. Homemaker.
Up yours, mailman.
Isabella speaking from station KFF in Cincinnati, transmitting with daily frequency from the laboratories of the Kroger Food Foundation, 125 Government Square.
Big Brother is watching and wants you to eat.
Amazing story in sound and pictures of the new institution established by the Kroger Grocery and Baking Company to help you...
The cameraman seems to be having trouble zooming in on the center of the picture. Or possibly they think the wall is more interesting than this guy.
And of preparing it so as to preserve both its nutritive value and its tastiness. The Kroger Food Foundation is set up, as you will see, with the most complete facilities and staff of experts for the carrying on of this important work of any similar institution in the country.
Like strippers or politicians.
Well-equipped laboratories and competent workers for the making of practically every known chemical, physical, bacteriological, and biological tests.
Someday we'll find the perfect balance of grape jelly and mustard.
A typical scene in one of the laboratories of the Kroger Food Foundation. These peaches are going to be analyzed and tested for quality, quantity, and everything else.
Everything else includes how they feel when placed on genitals.
Finding out which one of these cans contained the best peaches or gave the most for your money. In a store, you would probably shake them.
But me, I really love your peaches and want to shake your tree.
In vain for some information on the labels that you could depend upon. And you might, in a desperate effort, try to smell them.
This proves to be a terrible mistake.
You will certainly not cut the can open for you to taste them. The best possible guide that you, unaided, could have as to their quality.
And when you dislike them, tell him to put them back on the shelf half-eaten.
Scientists in the Kroger Food Foundation test canned peaches for Kroger stores. First, he weighs each can for gross weight.
This can is worth a salt shaker and 3 ink stamps.
Names. These scientists work with numbered cans. Next, he opens the can and determines the total weight of the contents.
Then he realizes the nightmare that his life has become.
On a half-inch mesh screen, he weighs the fruit residue and checks the solid contents to ensure that the declared net weight is correct.
As you can tell, this process has a lot to do with the housewife and determining what to have for dinner.
Known as the bricks scale. He then takes the separate pieces of fruit and examines their color and odor, since a good flavor and a good odor generally go together.
The same theory applies to household cleaners.
And the amount of skin, if any, left on the peeled pieces, the ruggedness of the pieces, and finally, he puts each piece through a test that gives a mathematical rating of its tenderness.
Look, can I just buy the damn peaches already?
To a rod as it pierces the fruit. Here we see a similar crushing test being applied to a canned pea.
So wait, they're testing every single pea?
Only a few ounces of pressure are needed to crush a canned pea, whereas the human jaw is capable of exerting as much as 150 pounds of pressure at a bite. You get some idea as to the greater sensitiveness of this machine over human teeth, tongue, and palate in testing tenderness. What is this young lady doing with that toy in her hand?
My God, we have a security breach! Someone save the peaches!
This is a colorimeter, and she is gauging, not guessing, at the color of these tomatoes.
Unfortunately, that's cauliflower in those beakers.
An important element of quality, because their taste seems to vary with it. With this little spinning color wheel, she can match the color of the can's contents exactly and get a mathematical reading of the result.
We must be anal retentive about every tomato.
Scientific instruments have not yet been invented that can give a reading on either taste or odor.
In the meantime, eat it or be punished.
Human senses must still be employed. Laboratory workers, however, do not rely upon their own judgment alone.
So instead, we call in the National Flapper Brigade.
Groups visiting the foundation to state their preferences as to taste among several different samples of foods.
Beans prove to be the most popular, so have some beans.
The phase of the foundation work is stamped with a seal of practicality by the cooperation of the Homemakers Reference Committee, an organization of women from almost every city in the Middle West.
But not the East Coast, those Ivy League bastards.
Ideas, recipes, and methods developed in the foundation laboratories and kitchens. They put the final stamp of practical approval on the activities of this modern organization.
And then you just skip it and go out to Denny's for Baconalia anyway.
Interesting tests are being performed on cereals. No, these are not cartons of ice cream. They contain samples of flour, the kind from which the staff of life is made.
Flour, the most important food group.
The scientist is interested in the chemical makeup of the contents, so he can tell whether it will make Kroger quality bread. He puts them through a whole series of tests, but the most interesting of all is how he determines the protein content of the flour.
Unless he shoves it up his nose, I doubt it's that interesting.
And this is the stomach he uses for that purpose. How would you like to have a tummy like this?
Well, you can, with 4 easy payments of $59.95.
Electrically to break down the protons. Note how the noxious gases are carried out of the room.
And pumped into an orphanage.
Over on the other side of the machine, the chemical processes on the digested flour are completed and an exact index of the protein content of each specimen is obtained.
Yeah, I got your digestion right here, you stupid... Wait, what the hell? Yeah, apparently this short is actually incomplete. We'll be right back with something else then. And we're back. Since we're on the subject of food, let's give some thought on arranging the buffet supper. Wait a second, where's the scenario writer? These credits are incomplete.
As Joan is making plans for entertaining a few of her friends at a buffet supper,
she's also plotting their downfall.
well ahead of time. She has learned that what is correct in terms of etiquette is also highly practical and logical.
Like not sticking your spoon into another person's ear.
Should offer, how it should be served, and what preparations she should make for arranging a buffet supper table.
Step 1, weigh her peaches.
On the evening of her party, just before her guests arrive, June has everything ready,
Yeah, just look at that spread.
actually setting the table. The buffet supper is a bit different from other meals in that it is served in the later evening when only a light meal is wanted.
But June refuses to listen to reason.
Seated at the table, since the guests will eat informally, eating wherever they wish to seat themselves.
One guest will take up permanent residence on the toilet.
Cloth is proper for this type of service. But it should be laid squarely and smoothly, with the sides hanging evenly.
If it sits rectangularly, your buffet is a complete failure.
Guests is meant as a token of respect and friendliness. Precision and symmetry are as necessary in arranging a table as is the choice of the proper service and decorations.
Decorating your table with the blood of your victims is not recommended.
June wants candles on the table and has to be reminded that this type of candlestick would be good if she were using candles as the principal light for the supper.
June then smacks Barbara with the candlestick for questioning her.
The light, they should not be placed on the table at all. However, her centerpiece of fruits is a proper choice.
A pity that she chose stink radish.
Obtrusive, and it is not expensive. But it should be placed exactly in the center of the table.
No, another inch to the right, June. How are you ever going to get a man if you can't put things perfectly center?
But she still has a problem before her in arranging the table so that her guests can serve themselves without getting in each other's way. The answer is simple. Place things around the table in the order in which each guest will help himself.
Well, if it's so damn simple, why'd you bring it up?
These should not be stacked, but laid out singly. Staggering the forks helps the guest to pick one up easily.
And yet they'll still end up stabbing themselves with the forks when they try to pick them up.
Of this kind. And what may seem to be a small detail is still a way of showing consideration for a guest.
Although they probably won't notice anyway.
As naturally in larger matters. The buffet supper as a whole is designed as a simple meal which can be eaten simply.
It isn't simple enough, dear. Your guests will panic and run wild.
The service is made as simple as possible.
What do the simple folk do? Have buffets, apparently.
A single hot dish is offered and kept warm in a casserole.
Uh-oh, the casserole isn't simple enough. Try again, June.
Or whatever you prefer. It should be substantial, but it need not be expensive. The object is to offer your guests something fairly hearty, but still a food that doesn't require a knife or cutting.
We don't trust these people with knives.
The same principle applies in offering a single cold dish, which is a balance for the hot dish. June has prepared individual salads which can be placed on the same plate as the hot food and can also be eaten easily without awkwardness.
At least until the casserole ends up being spilled into the salads.
So that each guest, as he goes around the table helping himself to each dish, will not be crowded, but have ample room.
And knowing your friends, June, they need the room.
The other foods may be placed conveniently between the main dishes. The rolls that June is serving are kept warm in a napkin.
Not simple enough. Trade out that napkin for a paper towel.
In this way, the guest may put the roll on his plate and not be bothered with a bread and butter plate. The entire meal, except for the dessert and drink, is put on the single plate, even the relish, or hors d'oeuvres, celery, olives, radishes, pickles, and so forth.
Man, June is going to need one huge-ass plate for all that food.
The dessert is served on separate plates, which have already been placed on the table. The offering of cake calls for another fork, and also in the serving for a cake knife and fork.
Different forks and utensils? My mind can't process this! It needs to be
The
simpler!
table is completely set. June can be confident and proud of her arrangements. She has a pleasing and proper meal prepared for her guests.
Now, if only she had people to invite.
Dish, hot buttered rolls, cold individual salads, relish. For dessert, there is cake. On the buffet are the drinks, milk and punch. For older people, there would be tea or coffee.
But I want to have coffee too. You're 25. You're not old enough.
But now everything is ready, and we can be certain that each guest will be fully aware not only of the food, but of the attractiveness and convenience of the table arrangement.
Or they'll take one look at this, then decide to pick something up on the way home.
Gesture of consideration for the guest. And here is the soul of etiquette, the proof of courtesy and friendliness.
If you fail to make your buffet exactly like this, you are not courteous or friendly. You are a friendless, monstrous dullard who will never know the joys of the buffet. Go to hell!